What is attachment theory? Or at least, what is attachment theory in the context of this channel, the things that I talk about, my beliefs, and how I organize all this stuff? That's worth talking about because my view on attachment theory is a little bit broader than the commonly held stuff you see on the internet. Someone recently told me it's like, attachment theory seems to be really trending right now. I'm like, actually, it's been pretty trending for at least 10 years, the 10 years that I've been doing this. It's a very consistent level of stuff that you see on basically every social media platform where people talk about like anxious attachment and avoidant attachment and what does this thing mean? And it does such a good job of describing this relationship that I just blew up or I just exited or all my relationship history. It does a very good job of that. It's actually the thing that drew me to it to begin with, is that this model was not just, hey, let's do some things and help your emotions get better. It was actually a model that started predicting things. And it's actually the most predictive model that I ever found. And then, of course, we've just expanded beyond that. What do I mean by predictive? I mean that we can meet people, and I've done this many times. You can meet someone and hear a few stories about how their most recent relationship kind of fell apart. And then you can make very accurate predictions about the way the previous relationships kind of fell apart. And you can also make very accurate predictions about what kind of emotional stressors they faced when they were a young child. And from that, you can kind of deduce the type of relational dynamics they had with their early caregivers or early attachment figures. An example might be the way the most relationship kind of fell apart was, here's the person, and they say, I started feeling really kind of insecure about whether or not my partner was actually into me, actually committed to this relationship. Were they actually going to stick around? They kind of started pulling away. They weren't really overt with their love and affection, and they weren't texting as often, and we weren't hanging out as much. And when we did, they were kind of just a little distracted, maybe on their phone a lot. It just felt like they were pulling away. And then I felt all this anxiety inside. I hear this one constantly. And then as all that anxiety built, I was just, what's going on? Give me some definition. I start trying to lock them down. That would be the terminology I would use, or an outsider. But from them, they're just basically trying to find certainty. They're trying to find assurance. They're trying to find connection. They're trying to find safety. So that's kind of the lead up to the final chapter of the relationship where that person pulls away further, the pursuer pursues more, and then eventually someone says, I can't do this anymore, and then it's over. Okay, what can we deduce from this? What does attachment theory predict about this? It gives us a model by which we would look at that and say, this person has a lot of fear around separation, disconnection, maybe loss, maybe abandonment, probably abandonment. Their self-worth is probably highly dependent on external sources of reassurance. They probably have low self-esteem. And that's the guesses we would make based upon a whole bunch of ways that we understand it, right? But what would this predict about the early childhood? Well, what this is going to predict is that this same kind of dynamic, the general arc of the story, is probably going to be stamped or recreated in prior relationships and probably future relationships also. But what does it predict about the early childhood stuff? Well, it predicts that without knowing any more about you, I would predict that you probably had an early childhood caregiver. Oftentimes, it's the mother. No demonizing mothers here. It's already a hard enough job. it's not about the failure of the parents. It is about a misunderstanding or just lack of education, which is a systemic problem. That's not a parental problem. That's a systemic problem. Lack of awareness about how different dynamics smash into a young developing nervous system in like very dramatic ways. So what this predicts is that there's probably an early childhood dynamic where some attachment figure that person really cared about, really felt safe with, was unavailable at a time that person felt very unsafe. So they're sitting in a high chair covered with pudding, an example I often use, or they wake up in a crib in a dark room and they don't know what's going on, or they have a little bit in later years, they might be standing in a playground or a yard and something scary happens, and then they look around, and then that safe space, that safe person is not there in that moment. Another example that was really eye-opening for me was child young enough to be in a stroller, basically strapped in, for safety. And then the stroller is basically pushed out into this field. And then the attachment figures, the parents, are sitting on a blanket near the stroller, but behind, right? So the baby can't see the parents. And then the fireworks start going off because it's 4th of July or New Year's or whatever. And so to that child, there's a lot of stuff happening. To the parents' point of view, the child's just right there and within earshot, but there's not eye shot, right? There's not line of sight. And so now this child is facing all this big bangs and surprises, and I don't know what's going on, and there's nobody around. My safe space isn't here, and I can't move, and I'm trapped. And that can lead to a very scary elevation of stress hormones inside that child's body. Okay? So I'm kind of going all over the place, but I'm doing that so that we can kind of show all the very different pathways that we use, the concepts inside attachment theory to kind of show us how these things connect. So we've heard about the downfall of this particular relationship, and then we take these concepts from attachment theory and we say there's very high likelihood, or strongly suggests is the term. It strongly suggests that we're going to have an early childhood story that sounds like this. Someone you really cared about was not available. And then, so I do hear this all the time. And then that person will come back and be like, oh yeah, my father was kind of just not really present. And he would show up sometimes and then he would vanish and he'd go off to work, or he'd disappear in the bottle, or whatever. Other ones are like, well, my mother had some very serious medical issues. And then so the whole family kind of had to deal with this. And I don't think poorly of them. I feel like I had a good childhood. I wasn't like beaten or abused or anything. And that's all great. That's fantastic in the sense that you believe you had a fine childhood or good enough. But the principles in attachment theory are measuring good, bad, or fine, indifferent, whatever, by kind of a different metric. And that metric is the stress activation inside that child's nervous system versus assistance in processing that stress activation. Okay? So if stress activation is very high and there's no assistance, no other person co-regulating, helping them discharge that stress or process it, metabolize it, then that child will, without tools to process stress, what happens? The stress is like very scary, very big, activates all this stuff inside the system. You get all this internal activation of safety response and all that kind of stuff. And it can very easily like crest into this point where the system is overwhelmed. And when the system is overwhelmed, big memories get created that are not entirely coherent because they overwhelmed the memory recording system, and highly emotionally salient. Salient meaning kind of high emotional significance. Emotional, like salience determines how important a memory is and how quickly it's accessible. And now there's two different memory systems in there. So a young nervous system that is going upward in stress without any assistance in helping them process or metabolize or discharge that stress or bring them back to safety, that nervous system will go up into creating big, important memories. Whatever the hell just happened, it is big, it is scary, we don't want to do this again. Let's start activating defensive mechanisms, protective mechanisms, that can assure that we don't ever have to do this again. I don't ever want to feel alone again. I don't ever want to be around big explosive things in the sky again. I don't ever want to be in a place where surprising things are happening and there's nobody around to hold me. I don't ever want to be hungry like that again. I don't ever want to be abandoned again. I don't ever want to feel like I'm alone. I don't ever want to feel like I'm rejected. I don't ever want to feel like I'm less important than the cell phone. I don't ever want to be around someone who is, consumed by some other thing in their life, right? Which I'm thinking of the terms of addiction and substance abuse. I don't ever want to be around that. Well, that one's tricky because of how often that actually leaps to the next generation and they actually start emulating the same behaviors. But that's further down the road. So this elevation of stress inside the nervous system creates these huge, powerful memories that are scary, important, quickly remembered, and will absolutely activate a defensive posture, protective physiology. The physiology of the body will react in a protective way. High stress. This is fight or flight. This is where fight or flight comes from. It's like the physiology of the body is beginning to activate because it is making a prediction that scary thing that happened once is going to happen right now or in a few moments. So it's making predictions based upon the past about what's going to happen in the future. So let's go back to the model or the example I was talking about. So you have this mother that had a medical ailment for the first few years of your life and was in and out of the hospital and had to sleep a lot and couldn't really be present, was definitely not there on a daily basis holding and caring and nurturing. I mean, that's heartbreaking for a mother. It's also heartbreaking for a child. It's system activating for the child, right? No villains here. Nobody's doing bad. There's no shame in this. Life is hard, right? It is trying to understand the dynamics so that we can start figuring out the gears and that we need to turn to help everyone get to a better place. So all that happens, and we're looking at this child that was around this unavailable attachment figure. Someone I cared about was not there in moments where I was scared. And they left me. They not left me in the sense of that they passed away or something, although that does happen. It's that they left me alone with my fear, with my pain. And that can be as simple as the fireworks in the sky or the crib in a dark room or sitting in a high chair full of pudding, right? Now, that person, fast forward 25 years, and they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they are dealing with an attachment figure that they care about greatly, and it looks like that person is about to leave. It looks like that person is about to abandon them. It looks like that person is beginning to prioritize something else over me. And then what happens? The system pulls up, it basically says, how can I put this in context? Like, what have I experienced in this life that helps me understand what's going on? And then so it says, hey, memory system, tell me what we got. And the memories that are sitting at the top of the stack are the ones with the highest emotional salience, generally speaking. So the first ones that pop out are threat, danger, fear, right? It's all the stuff that creates the predictive model that catastrophe is about to happen. And so when that shows up, the physiology of the body says, holy shit, like something terrible is going to happen. Activate all the defensive physiological systems, which is like increase your blood flow or heart rate and blood pressure and constrict the vasoconstrictors, out here at the edges of your torso so that, if your arm gets bitten off by a lion, you're not going to bleed to death, and change the dilation of your pupils, flush your digestive system. I see people all the time, they talk about this kind of recurring attachment issue, what to me is clearly attachment issues throughout their life. And I'm like, do you have digestive problems? And they're like, oh yeah, for years. I'm like, of course you do. Because your system's in a constant state of elevated stress. It's in a constant state of physiological reaction to a prediction that catastrophe is about to happen. How much does that explain everything? Maybe not everything. Maybe not for everybody. No model's perfect. I can tell you that this brought a clarity to my life and my history that was just like the ringing bell of truth. And it's brought clarity and understanding to thousands of others. So you can start to see that like this is attachment and survival dynamics. In this discussion that I've already had, I've talked about attachment, like raw attachment of like relational dynamics, and then trauma, and then survival dynamics, and then physiology, right? These things are all connected. They're basically the same thing. Anyone that tries to tease them apart is just like playing like conceptual word games. It's basically the same thing. And child development, forgot about that one, right? And so from that window, we can see that attachment theory is not just anxious and avoidant. It is not just how we show up in romantic relationships or who we should avoid or vet out or how I find love or whatever that stuff. All of that is downstream, significantly downstream. All of that is basically learned behaviors, developed, assembled, learned behaviors in response to the upstream fears, the upstream salient memories, the upstream lessons that were learned from prior stressful experiences. All of these things are downstream and strategies that are developed, assembled, and adopted because they help you decrease the stress levels of your system. Who would you be if all the fear, anxiety, and chattering thoughts finally went quiet?
Many people in daily lives, they are just holding themselves back.
And I looked up yoga retreats and all these different things, but nothing quite resonated.
Honestly, I didn't think about it. Just like, I'm going.
Felt like every emotions from every person was valid here.
Allow yourself to be fully yourself.
I think it was a contained environment where you could freely express yourself.
That's a big lesson. It's okay to get close to people. It's okay to share. It's okay to be vulnerable.
And no one will shame whatever feeling you feel. Nobody makes it bad or wrong or even uncomfortable.
They added more than it would have been one-on-one.
Don't be afraid. Don't worry about the money. It's totally worth it.
I did not have the capability of stating my needs and boundaries and possibly disappointing somebody. But in this moment, I could.
Attachment theory isn't about romance. It's not about finding love. It is about the master index of threat and safety inside your nervous system. Attachment theory is the way that we look at how your system metabolizes stress, what initial events happened that created the salient memories, that created the lessons by which your nervous system organizes data, it organizes attachment, it organizes stress, and metabolizes or fails to metabolize all those things. And then the strategies which lead to behaviors, the strategies that are assembled, and then the behaviors that are represented or manifested, exhibited, whatever, demonstrated. So a lot of this is reverse engineering. I just talked about a whole bunch of big things, and it all came from one person telling me the way that their last romantic relationship kind of fell apart. See, the model is this big. The romantic aspect of it is this big. And because one of the problems with the way that attachment theory shows up on the internet a lot is that people are only looking inside this little bubble, and they say, oh, it's anxious on one side and avoidant on the other, and everybody wants to be secure. And if we could just be secure, then I will finally find the love that I want and all that kind of stuff. The problem with that is it doesn't actually give you any solutions. And I just recently had a client talking about this. They're like, I'm in therapy for years, and we've talked about this stuff, but my therapist just keeps telling me that this is where these behaviors came from. And the person's like, great, so you're telling me I'm cursed? You're telling me that it's just the way I am and it's never going to get better? Well, if you're inside this little bubble, I'm like, it's just these three things: anxious, avoidant, secure. There's also a disorganized in there, but a lot of people don't know how to talk about that one. So if that's it, then what do I do about it? I'm just effed. And there's a lot of people that will dip their toes into attachment theory and come out and just be like, well, great, now I'm cursed. I'm never going to find, one of my biggest videos is this. Anyway, whatever. One of my biggest videos was just done in the middle of the night on a whim, and it's about why you mostly find avoidance while you're dating as you move up through the demographic window. And so there's a lot of people that hear that and they say, oh, great, I'm just screwed. It's like, no, you're not screwed. That's not the lesson at all. The lesson is, this explains why the dynamic is happening that way and why you have this perception that it's happening that way. Now that you understand that, change it. Do the things that you need to do to flip the script. And of course, the answer to that is clear. It's like, become secure so that you become the attractive one, the shining light on the hill inside this dating pool that's mostly filled with insecure people. Do that, win, profit. Anyway, the point being is that the attachment theory that's viewed through this lens of little romantic la 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 is only partially helpful. It mostly helps with people that are flailing in the void. Something uncomfortable just happened and there's oh my God, this is terrible. Why is life like this, etc. And someone's like, oh, here it is. Put it in this little model. And it's you were dating one of the bad guys. And there's only 3 people in here. There's the bad guys, which is the avoidance. Not true. The superheroes, which is the secure, and then the good guys, which is the anxious. I am oversimplifying, but I wish that was a parody, but it's not. There's so many people basically view it like this. And when they view it like that, it basically gives them someone to demonize. It gives them a sense of righteousness. And then it gives them this kind of fuzzy goal that it's like, well, I just stop dating avoidant guys and start looking for a secure man. And if I find a secure man, everything's going to be great. No, it's not. No, it's not. A little bit better, but your salient memories are still inside your nervous system. Your salient memories are still going to create very strong predictive models that will activate your system in a systemic threat response that will make you freak out, lose your mind, blah, 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 blah. You're going to keep repeating the same patterns. In order to turn that around, we have to change the conclusions of your nervous system. We have to change the conclusions your nervous system reaches in a given stressful context. We have to change the predictive models that your nervous system creates instantaneously when a given stress comes in through your sensory network. Do that, everything changes. Guaranteed. There's no way it can't. It's bizarre to me once I finally, the whole thing kind of became clear. I'm like, this model and this system and the way of approaching it basically guarantees success. It's just simply how much effort do you want to put in? How many reps do you want to do? So I talk about the rep model a lot, but I'll jump into that. You know what? I'll do that in the next video. I'll keep this one shorter because we're just kind of getting launched with season 4. So what is attachment theory? Attachment theory is a large network of kind of interconnected concepts that create highly predictive models about the way a nervous system responds to stress, how it organizes information, how it organizes the stress that it receives. Does it organize that stress into threat, or does it organize that stress into inconvenience? Or does it organize that stress into something that's like, ooh, this is actually not only safe, but it's going to help me be better? What? What are you talking about, dude? Yeah, people that go to the gym. Why the hell would you go to the gym? Why does anybody go to the gym? It sucks. It's painful. It's sweaty. It's uncomfortable. You're in pain afterwards. Your body's depleted. These are all stress points. We go to the gym, we exercise because it is a way of introducing stress to my system in a structured way. And then we do it in a structured way because we know that our system will respond to that with what? Growth, repair, reorganization, and rebuilding. We literally tear things apart so the system can rebuild because we know that when it rebuilds in a way that's actually stronger. So because of that model, that's just a model. It's a bunch of concepts that someone taught you. Because of that model, we go do it intentionally. We go put ourselves in a situation of stress and discomfort intentionally because we have a belief, a predictive model, that this stress is actually going to make me better. And then all the various downstream positive events or positive impacts of that thing, right? So this is how we organize that stress. But there's other things that when the stress comes in, we organize it over here and say, that's uncomfortable, it's displeasing, it's painful, it's hurtful, it's hurting me, it's damaging me, it's causing pain, it's whatever, right? That's just a way of organizing stress. It is not true. It is the way your system is organizing it. And once we understand that, and we can change that, which we can, absolutely, then everything changes. Everything improves. You develop mastery over your life, and you can build everything, not just romance, everything, work, family, self, every relationship in your life, every stressful situation in your life can be modified in the way that you organize that stress. And you do this once you kind of understand how the pieces work, You can start like putting it together like Legos or Tinker Toys. And then you realize that you are building a system that is moving you towards the life you desire automatically. You use discipline to assemble the stress exposure, and then the nervous system outputs different predictive models, which feels like, oh, I just have this opinion. I just have this emotion. I just have this excitement. Anyway, I'll get into more of that later. Hope this has been helpful. Not too cognitive, but who cares? Maybe it is. Thank you all for listening. It's a joy to be here, and see you next time. Peace.